Yup. All right, bro. All right, so I wanted to talk to you because I wanted to start having just conversations around navigating life. Um, and one of the things that just passed, just the holidays, and I wanted to touch base on you about like what's it like navigating holidays as former foster youth, but also just as young adults in general. And I guess also like how can we create something special during the holidays, especially for folks who don't already have that um, built-in system where they can go to holidays and not really think much of it, um, whereas other people really have to kind of plan it out. So yeah, I guess like first, I don't know. Do you feel okay like talking about? I guess we can both talk about just like growing up and how holidays and this time of year was for us growing up in general, like as a child before 18 and when we became adults. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so it was never really a thing. I mean, my foster parents would celebrate it, but we weren't included in it. Social workers would um, drop off presents for what they were told were the gender of the child, as they put it, but apparently they never got the gender right because I never got any boy toys. But then my foster parents wouldn't let me keep them. They would always donate them. Like within a week of the social worker dropping off the gifts, they would always donate them. Um, and so, like, celebrating them was never really a thing. I think the first time I celebrated Thanksgiving or anything, I was like 19 years old. Um, and so, um, yeah, the, it was never anything I was a part of or invested in or like really paid attention to because it's just not something that happened.
Mm, that's interesting. I just got flashbacks of like I remember social workers coming to my house with like a big trash bag of like this toy, yes, the trash
Yeah.
bag of toys, and it's by gender and age, right? Um, so I guess like my whole I was a little bit different because I think that you spent most of your childhood in the child welfare system, correct?
Yeah, 13 years. Yeah.
So I went into the child welfare system officially when I was like 15 or 16. So I guess holidays during that time was already kind of built upon those years beforehand. So like I remember like the holidays before me going into the system, I remember I would be with my mom sometimes or I would just be with like another family or like alone, wherever I was. But um I distinctly remember when I was with my mom, we had child welfare involvement, but we weren't like in the system formally. But social workers would definitely come to our house with that trash bag, um, and it would be for me and my sister, my brother a little bit. He's 8 years older than me, so he was like an adult in a lot of the times. But the the giving away of toys, like I love my mom. I don't hold this against her. But she also gave our toys away. She actually sold our toys or gave them away. Uh, and man, dude, the memories of that. But it was interesting to me what you said was that you you didn't really celebrate it that much. Uh, was it because I'm assuming like you didn't stay in one home throughout your whole childhood? Was that like a consistent thing that happened in different homes or different spaces where you weren't included? And then you, I guess, like that just became the norm that you just don't celebrate. Well, celebrating it is just not as, I wouldn't say normal, but it's just not as a natural thing that comes to you. Did I hear that right?
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I don't know why. I don't know if it was, because they didn't like foster youth or like whatever the reason was, but yeah, we were just always excluded. And I can't remember a single foster home where they decorate it or they celebrate it or um, anything like that. If it wasn't to put on a show for the social worker while they were dropping off toys. But as soon as the social worker left, then, everything was either taken down or um, it was left up just for appearance sake. But there wasn't any celebration. There wasn't anything that changed. Um, yeah, there was no including of us and their traditions or anything like that. And so, yeah, it's just not something I ever grew up knowing was supposed to be special or anything. Like I knew we got it off school, which was cool because then I didn't have to deal with the bullshit that was going on at school. But otherwise, that was the only thing I knew was different is that we just got this random break towards the end of the year. Um, but that was pretty much it.
What about your friends? Like the culture of it. Did you feel left out as like a child with, because like it's that time of year, everyone kind of goes into holiday mode. You kind of feel it. Your friends are talking about it. Did you ever feel that you were left out in that space?
No, I moved around so much that I never really had consistent friends that talked about it. And um, by the time I went back to school, I was usually in a new school. And so, those conversations were either past or they didn't happen. Um, but no, I was never in a space where like that became a predominant part of the conversation. Um, Summertime was the only time because when I went back to school after summertime, teachers always wanted us to write about our summer experience. But when it came to the holidays and stuff, I was either moving or starting a new school or whatever, and so it never became this thing where I even realized there was something that was supposed to be happening that wasn't.
Um, so and then it wasn't until you became, you said, like 19 that did you ever start thinking of the holidays as something that was either important to you or something that you looked forward to or something that you ended up dreading? Like when did, if at all, did feelings for the holidays or thoughts about the holidays come up for you?
Yeah, it was when I mean, it's still not important to me, but that's mostly just because of all my experiences throughout life. But yeah, it became this um, like sense of dread and stuff when I was in the military, and everyone was taking off and talking about what they were doing and stuff like that, and then people just kept asking me like, "Oh, what family are you visiting?" and stuff like that, and they just wouldn't let it go. Like they just kept um, bugging me about like, where are you going? What are you going to be doing and stuff. And so I would just have to make it up because they just didn't believe me that I wouldn't be doing anything. And so I was like, well, fine, I'll just make it up then.
The making things up, that's so relatable. Like, I think, yeah, it's great. I think that foster youth, former foster youth, or people who don't have supports in general, or just have a different life than like the norm, whatever the norm is. I mean, what is the norm truly? But I guess like it is a normal conversation and it's a given that you're doing something, like you're going back to something. And we always have to make things up so we don't like dampen the mood or make things awkward of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like hang out with friends. Like me and my friends are like hanging out when really it's like me at the television, like counting down the clock. Um, but yeah, that's so weird. I don't know. That's something maybe we should like look into that a little bit more. Like how we have to like tweak our story to fit everyone else's comfortability. Um, yeah, I would say so. The holidays for me, I remember. So as a child, when I was younger, especially, I would say my biological family, we actually did spend holidays together. I like there were a few times. So I have six six great aunts, right? So they all grew up together, and a lot of times they would host. They used to host, and I remember like there would be like a whole spread, especially like during Thanksgiving. Christmas was a little bit different, but during Thanksgiving there would be like a whole spread of soul food, and it was like great. But I also remember I was definitely like an outlier in my family. I still am an outlier in my family. I remember going to the holidays, and then even as a child, like being called like I was like overweight. They would always talk about my weight, or they would always say like, "Oh, you're not black enough" because of the way that I spoke or the things that I was like into. Uh, I even remember even among my cousins, right? Like among the kids I'm supposed to be growing up with, I was kind of always ostracized in a way. Uh, and I think a lot of people experience that with just within families of when you're going to holidays, you have to dread the conversations that you don't want, or the criticisms, or the judgments, things like that. I don't know. I don't know if you've like ever experienced that in any space or not. Because I know that, like you said, you didn't really experience the holidays much at all growing up as a child. Um, but I I think that just having those memories it creates kind of like an economy of like I feel like there's a loss, like a grief and a space where my family could come together, but also just that anxiety of I don't know if I want to be in that space because it felt like I was never welcomed in that space to begin with. Um, and so I don't know, it's really such a weird thing, like having to deal with the multiple emotions of it all. So yeah, I would say that's kind of like the root of it. And then when I went to foster care, I honestly don't really remember much about the holidays, like when I was in care. Um, but when I got older, yeah, it kind of felt like a grind of trying to find what I'm going to do for the holidays. It was just like an exhausting grind of like asking friends or hoping somebody would ask me, but also it's like, do I even want to go? Because when you go, it's like a family's whole different. I think you spoke about this a little bit beforehand, before we're hopping on this conversation right now about, when you join into a space that was already established or a family that was already established, like you go to their holidays, you still feel like you're like sticking out like a sore thumb because they have their own traditions, especially during Christmas or during Hanukkah or whatever you celebrate, right? They have their own traditions. Um, they have their own experiences, and you're just kind of there as somebody's friend that like you were invited. Um, I don't know. Have you ever experienced that part?
Yeah. And yeah, just to touch on some other stuff you said. I mean, I was always criticized, which by my bio family, which I found hilarious because we never even knew each other. Like we lived in a van for a couple years, and then we were just in foster care, and so it was like, well, you guys don't know me.
That's so relatable.
Yeah, it's like you guys don't even know me well enough to criticize me, but yet you guys just be making shit up. um,
Right? Yes.
but nowadays it's like, well, I do dread it because it's I realize what I'm missing out on and what I don't have and stuff like that. So it does become a very different feeling now that I'm consciously aware. And being in college doesn't help that because college is, or especially around the holidays, they emphasize like, what are you doing and like good luck with your family and all this stuff. And it becomes this like really in your face thing. But yeah, I went to someone's Thanksgiving once. No one's ever invited me to Christmas, but someone invited me to Thanksgiving once when I was in undergrad, and it was probably one of the most awkward things I've ever experienced for a lot of reasons. But one of the main reasons was I had no idea what the hell was going on. They were doing all kinds of stuff, and I was just like, what is happening?
Wait, what type of stuff? Like, were they chanting? They're
No, they
chanting over
weren't
the turkey?
chanting. Yeah, yeah, they were blessing the turkey. Yeah. No, they were. They had like their little inside jokes, and they would.
Mm,
They had their songs that they would sing, and um, they had
I
this
never
like
heard of a
weird.
song during Thanksgiving.
Yeah, they had this like weird televised church thing that they would watch, and I was just like, what? I don't know. Not like just give me food and let me sleep. Like that's what Thanksgiving is supposed to be to me. Like just lots of food and sleep. Just
Oh, that sounds hella awkward. That sounds so awkward. Um, how does so I know that I think that we're similar in the sense that we have like we quote unquote have a family that I'm not talking about a biological family. I'm talking about like a family that took us in, that I guess we can go to, right? Like we do, and I would say, look, I would say like yes, it is a privilege that like I can go to a family. I don't know about you. Maybe I'm like making it up. I just know because we're friends, but there's like a house that we can go to, and even though it may be really hard and difficult, um, and we can spend holidays with uh, like that family or the families that had taken us in. Um, is that similar to you? Like, is that true for you?
I mean, that was the first and only time I was ever invited to someone's house. Um, Someone invited me for Christmas last year, but I was like, well, that's even worse than Thanksgiving. No, uh, I'm not doing that. Um, but I think it becomes even, at least for me, it becomes even harder because people like to tell childhood stories and memories and stuff during the holidays, but I don't have those, not in any positive way. So when they're like, "Oh, what's a favorite memory of yours during this time of year or whatever?" There wasn't one because it was all chaos and abuse and moving and social workers being pissed off because they had to deliver toys and whatever else. And it's like, well, if I answer that, then you're all going to get depressed, and then this is going to be a very different feeling. And so then I have to lie again because I don't have this answer that you're expecting me to have. And so like even if someone invites me to do something, I don't take them up on it because I generally know that that's going to be an expectation to have these kind of like heartwarming stories and stuff. And I don't have those.
Yes. Yeah, and I would say like I am like I do have like an option to go to like a family friend's place where they're family to me. Um, but it's like it's that same it's exactly what you were talking about. It's like I know that if I go, I would feel that once again I'm like not a part of this family, which would reinforce that like I'm alone, but I'm faking it for everyone else. Like that's what it feels like. Um, and then you can see like the family photos and the traditions and I would say like actually when I was 14 actually there was a family that did take me in and that's something that I am incredibly grateful for. But the thing too is like again if I ever go there for the holidays, and they definitely invited me like if they were going to visit their like the larger family for the holidays out of state. They've invited me before, but I would always decline because again I stick out like a sore thumb. It's traditions that I'm not a part of, and I didn't grow up with them, so like we have different opinions on things. We have just everything is kind of different. Um, and it's really hard for me. Like I struggle so much because it's like grief all around me. Even though I'm among people, I think that well, it depends on the people that I'm around, honestly. Um, but if I'm around them or a similar family, like it just reinforces that I'm yeah, it's just kind of me among everyone else. And especially during Christmas, like the gifts and it's just so much more personable. And it's hard because nobody truly knows you. Uh, because you didn't have foster those experiences together. Uh, so and I guess like I think that's like a good segue into I was wrestling with this idea of are we as people who don't have like a natural family to celebrate holidays with or other celebrations with like birthdays, are we well maybe not birthdays, six holidays, but are we like being not too critical, but right, me not wanting to celebrate holidays with someone because of like expectations or just differences or things like that, is that similar feelings to people who already have family and grew up with them and everything, but still struggle during the holidays because of those same reasons? Well, I wouldn't say like the same reasons, but the same feelings of just feeling isolated and expectations that are already having to lie to make other people feeling comfortable or yeah to make other people feel comfortable or being criticized or ostracized, like those same type of feelings. And do you know where I'm getting at?
Yeah. I don't know. And this might not be something other people agree with. It's probably not going to be, but um, I think it's different when you have the foundation and as you age, you become outside of your family or whatever because of an identity or um because of politics or just because your family becomes screwed up and gets divorced or whatever. Like that's a very different thing than not having the foundation in the first place, or the foundation being that of um trauma and abuse and neglect. Like it's not the same thing. And um, even the people I know who are in romantic relationships, they will explain to their partner, like, oh, when we go to my house, like, this is how stuff works and stuff. Um, that's never been my experience when someone has invited me to do something. They just expect me to show up and they're like, oh, don't worry about it. But that's not, there is worrying about it. I think Christmas is a little easier than Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving became, like, at least in mainstream media, this place where you vent all your frustrations with your families for the year. It became like the complaining holiday. Um,
Yeah.
but I also think, like, it's the one holiday of the year where you're supposed to be thankful for all this and all that. And as an adult, I have a ton to be thankful for, but that's not something that's gonna translate back into like some positive childhood story that I'm gonna be able to tell someone. And so, I think it's different, um, because you have an expectation when you grow up with a family who does that kind of stuff, and um, so you already have an idea of what it's supposed to be like versus um, situations where that just never occurred, or if it did occur, it was just so wrapped up in abuse and stuff that that's not a foundation you want to draw upon anyway.
I actually love that take on it. Um, because I think it's hard, right? Because every time, well, a lot of the times when we talk about a story or when we talk about our struggles and we link it back to the trauma that we've experienced, we automatically get shut down, right?
Hmm.
Of like, oh no, I experienced that too, right? Like, no, I experienced that too. And like, sure, like, I do think that, I mean, I 100% believe that it is the human condition itself that of struggling with grief and loss and isolation and criticism and false expectations and all of these different things, but they show up in completely different ways and completely different degrees because of the experience, the foundations that we have. It's um I always say, like, it feels like we just have like just different blueprints, uh because like it may take it may take someone like 30 minutes or an hour or a day, right, or even like a week or whatnot to work through something, but like it takes us like years, right? It's like you said, it's like when we're building a house, right? It's like the house that we have, its foundation is completely messed up and we're having to rebuild it. But another person's house, the foundation may be completely fine. It's just messy inside. And they just got to clean it out, right? It. That's how it feels a lot of the time, um, for people who've experienced trauma, especially as like in their childhood that has set the trajectory for their lives. Um, so yeah, thank you for sharing that. Like, truly, because I like, honestly, I think like it's like courageous to speak about that because that's something that I've been struggling with. Is like, we how do we bridge our identities, or the experiences that we've had to one another? Because I guess like the feelings that we experience are very similar, but also how do we also recognize that we truly do have different experiences and they show up differently, and we respect that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes down to realizing, like, foster care, having lived experience in foster care, um, or juvenile hall, or being an unaccompanied minor, or like any of those, right? it automatically becomes something someone doesn't want to hear about, and they shut it down by saying, just like you said, I've been through that, or they'll say, oh, you're not in that situation anymore. And it's the only identity where I've seen that happen. No one says like, oh, you're not gay anymore, or you're not black anymore, you're not whatever anymore. Like, it only exists within this realm of foster care and trauma and stuff like that. No one's going to be like, oh, you're not a veteran anymore, you're not a college student anymore. Like, those are
Mhm.
those are things people latch onto and expect it to follow you through your life. But yet that same understanding and compassion and stuff is not given to the identity of being a foster youth. And so I find it very different than what other people um, expect when you have a overarching identity that society um, stigmatizes, or just doesn't 100% accept.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, man. It makes me think about this. This has really nothing to do with the holidays at all. It's just about exactly what we're talking about right now. But it do a little segue and then come back. But I remember I my house is not decorated like at all. It's something that I talk to like my therapist about, something that I talk to other people about sometimes. But number one, because I've never stayed in one place for like
Mhm.
longer than a year. Um, and if we did, what the heck was decorations? Like, we didn't even have furniture. We were sleeping on the floor, like, and we used our dirty clothes and trash bags as pillows, like with a sheet, right? Um, and the house was always a mess. And yeah. So like me as an adult now, I have so much anxiety. Like I always have a vision of what I want my place to look like. Oh, and it's not house, it's apartment because the girl ain't got house money. But I always wanted, I have an idea of like what my place wants to look like, but it is so exhausting to actually put that into action. Like so exhausting that it took how long have I been in this apartment? Like 3 years? 3 years for me to hang my first my first uh decoration or photo wall. I would say I would lie. I did hang something up when I first came, and that was it. And then it took like 3 more years to hang something else up, something that I actually wanted, that actually speaks to like who I am. Um, and it's like in the kitchen, and it's like super tilted. It won't stay up the way I want it, and it took so much out of me because I was thinking through it. I was like telling myself that I deserve it. I was telling myself that it's okay. Like I think that's the big thing. It's like it is okay. You are okay. We're okay. Um, and I remember like telling like one of my bosses at my job. I don't know what we were talking about. And it's like like one of the things that show up for me is like it. It's hard for me to decorate. Like I don't even know how to do it. I don't know what it looks like. And even if I try to do it, it's mental gymnastics for me. And I remember like Sean Mack would shut it down, saying like, "Well, no, I struggle with that too. Like we all struggle with that decorating." And I'm like, I mean, yeah, sure. Like, yes, that's true. I mean, because it is true, right? Like, I go to my friend's house and we talk about it too. Like, yeah, like the photos that they have stay in their boxes forever, and I'm like, yeah, I don't even have those though. Like I don't have that. Like, I don't even think about that. Um, and I don't know. It's so hard to don't want to make it a pity party. I just wanted to share that there's truth in this that often gets overlooked. Uh, and it is so truthful. It's so big that it affects our every being and the way that we show up, caring, all of this, all of these different aspects of what trauma looks like, and how it affects like even the minuscule things in our lives. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I still don't have a single decoration of any kind. I don't have anything on my walls. I don't have nothing, and that's not just around the holidays. That's any time of year, but especially
yeah,
around the holidays. Like,
exactly.
I don't even like to go grocery shopping or anything because then people just start asking random questions of like, "Oh, are you looking forward to the holidays and stuff?" First off, I don't know you. Secondly, no, I'm not.
No, yeah, I don't know you. People just be like coming up and talking to us like we ain't up in 2024. Like, no, we can't do that no more. Like, we need to have an established relationship.
Yeah, and they just be like, "What?" I don't know what it is about the holidays where people just feel like they can just start randomly asking strangers about their lives, but it really does happen, and people just be up in there like, "Oh, are you making stuffing for Thanksgiving or what?" I'm like, dude, I'm just up in here to buy groceries. Just leave me alone.
Yo, yeah. I'm to be honest, I don't even go. Yeah, I definitely go grocery shopping in the holidays because of the same thing. Like, and everyone's just like getting ready for it, and I'm trying to avoid it.
Right, exactly.
Like, so, all right. So I wrote some things down, like just other things to consider. And so I was like, okay, who are some other folks that are more likely to experience the same feelings that we experience like every year? Um, who are the people that are more likely, yeah, to feel the same experiences? And I wrote down like, okay, people who are experiencing homelessness, um, transient populations, so like folks who are traveling, um, for careers, or like college students, especially college students. I remember some of my friends during college, and even now, like I still have friends now that we were literally just talking about, like, oh yeah, I'm not doing anything for Thanksgiving, so I'm not going back home. And the sadness that comes from that. Older folks, I think that that's like a huge population that is kind of pushed to the side, when it comes to holidays. Well, when it comes to like any anything, like just the day to day. Um, I know that, yeah, there's a lot of loss in that with people who are older and people who are in the hospital. So I don't know. I was just trying to bridge that the holidays in general for everyone can be very, very lonely. And even if you do have a family, because of the identities you hold or the beliefs that you hold, or wherever you are in your life, you still experience all of those, just the annoyingness and the expectations and things like that. Um, but I would say, bringing it back to people who like maybe have like, yeah, are trauma involved, or just don't have a built-in family, like it is, what's it called, like it's something that's still there. It's still like you still have security in that, that you still have somewhere, you have something to miss, I guess, like the pinpoint. I don't know, like I don't know if that makes sense. um is that, yeah, like it's just like you still have that foundation of like something. You're missing your family, that's still like you have a family or you have a place to go. Um, I don't know if I'm making sense in that.
No,
Like,
that totally makes sense. And yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's different when you have something to miss versus missing something that you were supposed to have and never did.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
it
yeah.
is
You're
very
supposed to
different.
have
And
never did.
yeah, and it is very different. I think the greatest holiday season I ever experienced was when I was in Germany. Um, and I don't know how German holidays works in families, but I know how it worked um, in society as a whole. And whether you have family or not, there's always festivals and stuff. So like
Yeah.
there's these large public gatherings that you can just go to and hang out with people, and you don't have to be a part of anyone's family or do anything. You can just go chill out at a festival and no one's going to judge you for that because there's so many people doing it, and it's an expectation of the holidays that you go to these festivals. And so you're not as alone in that because no one's judging you for not being in a house and not doing whatever the hell people do during the holidays. And so yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's one of the greatest that is the greatest holiday season I ever experienced because it was a very different take on what we
Ooh.
do here in America.
Yo, dude, we should go to Germany for the holidays. That sounds amazing. Like a festival where just anyone can pop up. Like, just you don't have to be like mom, dad, and crew, right? It's just anyone can pop up and just have fun, and there doesn't have to be a relation to it.
No, and there's tons of food and there's like anything that you could want. There's rides and food and just places to chill, and yeah, it's very different. And everyone's out. It's not like this thing where people are like, "Oh my God, it's the holidays. I don't want to work." No, people are just chilling and like, "Hey, come get some food and come do whatever." Um, yeah, it was a very different experience, and I really enjoyed that because it gave me a sense of comfort that I never had before, and no one was asking about like, what's your story about this or whatever. No, people were just like, oh, this is fun. Like, go here or try this food or whatever, and you could just have random conversations with people, and it wasn't focused on like some fat white guy coming down your chimney.
Dude, yeah, you know what I just realized, like, almost at the end of this conversation, that you're like the main person on the screen. I, I forgot I was supposed to do side and side. Oh well. Um, like,
They can see
well,
your
like,
head and they can see your eyes. It's good enough.
yeah, I think what's good, what's good. Uh, oh well. But yeah, so what do you? How do you navigate the holidays nowadays? As an adult, when it gets to that time of year.
I just do things that I like. I try not to focus on the fact that it's the holidays and just try to focus on the fact that it's a time of year where um, expectations and stuff are different, like in society as a whole. And so I can do stuff that I'm um, more willing to push off at other times of year. So, I do a lot of self investment in doing things that I just truly like to do, playing video games, doing woodworking, um, watching stupid TV for no reason other than I just want to watch stupid TV, sleeping longer, doing stuff like that. Um, Eating whatever I want to eat because no one judges you for pigging out in the holidays. Um, and so yeah, it's just doing stuff like that where I don't necessarily have to focus on the fact that it's the holidays, but I get to focus on like, okay, I can invest in these small things where it'll help me, but I also won't have to spend so much energy paying attention to what I don't have. Um, I can just invest in things that I like and I want to do.
Mm, I like that. I like that a lot. It's like definitely like pampering yourself.
Yeah.
Of like whatever you want to do, like it's your day, you know. And I also think there's like I struggle a lot in that I get very exhausted during this time because of like the mental work that goes into during this time. I get exhausted all the time from mental work, but especially during this time of year, especially when it gets darker outside center and everyone's making plans and talking about it, and you know the lights go up for the the meals are getting prepped, whatever. I struggle a lot just thinking about it and navigating through it all. So I know I get into like a habit sometimes where I just kind of shut it all out and I stay in my bed and I watch YouTube. And to be honest, I've learned over the years of how to listen to what I need. Because like there's sometimes like for Christmas, it was definitely a YouTube type of being in the house, chilling, resting, getting through it. Thanksgiving was kind of like I really wanted to spend it with friends. I really wanted to kind of get out there. So I tried to find spaces where I could do that. I remember even this Thanksgiving, right? I definitely transformed Thanksgiving because I spent it with a friend who actually doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving. And you know, we made dinner. It was like lentils and rice and like some side dishes with, and we watched like the Barbie movie, right? So it was definitely just making it something that fulfills you, but it doesn't have to fit this template that the rest of the U.S. is pushing on us because like we've learned like this is what holidays should look like. Um, and it's really hard for holidays to look like that, and we beat ourselves up that it doesn't look like that. And so yeah, I guess just like giving grace on what you need and not beating yourself up for what you need. But I also think yeah, like definitely getting out as much as possible, getting out of that space as much as possible, even if it's hard. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and it's definitely gonna be hard. And I truly hope the new generation that unfortunately has foster care experience has figured out a better way of doing this than I did. But um, you know, I don't think it's something that you can just develop without intentional effort. You have to put energy into doing these kind of things and celebrating, hey, I got a day off work, or coming up with something to celebrate. For me, it's just finishing a semester because I'm in college right now, just making it through another semester. And uh, you know, not worrying about anything else, not worrying about oh, I'm not gonna have a Christmas tree or presents or whatever. Like, it is what it is, but I can do things where um I can take care of myself, and it doesn't have to be such a burden that it was in the past. And so, yeah, it's taken me a lot of years to learn that and get to that point, but it's definitely a concerted effort. Um, and as exhausting as it is, I would rather do that than just sit around and be depressed and not put the energy into it, because I feel like the depression makes it worse than spending the energy to actually attempt to do something different.
yeah, yeah, I agree with that a lot. Um, so like, what advice would you give to folks who are having difficulty navigating the holidays because of just not having a place to go.
Yeah, I mean, find something that you do like to do. I know it's the holidays, but there is stuff that's open. And one thing that I like to do, because I know no one's going to be talking about the holidays, is do online gaming, right? Because people are just going to be trying to play the game, and no one's going to be like, oh, what Christmas presents did you get, or whatever. Like, that's not going to be a thing. I can just go online and play games and talk to people, and it'll be like nothing else is going on in the world. And that's great for me. Um, but I think you gotta find something that works for you, that gets you out of that headspace of like what you don't have, and um, celebrates an accomplishment or celebrates something, no matter how small it is, because otherwise your brain is just never gonna leave this idea of loss, even if, like I said before, it's a loss that you never had, so it's weird to look at it that way, but it is a loss because even though you didn't have it, you're supposed to, and it's the expectation that you have it, but you don't. And so yeah, it's like this weird thing, and so you gotta find a way to transition that.
Facts, facts. And is there anything that you wanted, like you want or wanted to do during the holidays that you have the power to do, but you just don't do it?
Yeah, and as as bizarre as this is going to sound after everything I've said throughout this conversation, um, yeah, just taking people up on their offers of like going to their house and stuff. Um, I have the ability to do that. I just don't, because there's so much energy and in forethought and hypervigilance that goes into it, and it's like, well, what if they get into a fight, or what if they? It's like this preemptive hypervigilance, that goes into uh, accepting an invitation, and it's like, well, sometimes you just gotta be like, fuck it, and just go for the experience, which I have yet to do.
Yes. Yo, you know what's crazy? When I was thinking of this question, and it's like, I, your answer is the exact same thing. I was even like, yo, it sounds crazy, but everything that I struggle with, instead I struggle with doing, I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, like man, our need for connectedness is crazy. Uh, yeah, I remember. This year I would say I am proud of myself, and that I did express like I never celebrated Hanukkah with anyone. I really don't know how to sell. I mean, other than me watching videos online and reading, and making something for myself. I've never had a traditional Hanukkah experience within a family. And someone like people that I met at like a Torah study actually invited me to their family's Hanukkah party, and it was awesome. Like to be honest, it definitely it's crazy because you get so anxious, and there are definitely some times when there are things that you go to and they're duds, like like drag bingo. If you know, you know. Oh, that sounds horrible. Not like drag bingo itself. I love drag bingo. I love drag bingo. But Anthony and I went to like a drag bingo that was like really, it was it was really underwhelming. It was such an interesting experience. But I love drag bingo in general. You should definitely go. Dang, been canceled. But love drag bingo in general. Just the one we went to was wild. They were wild. But no, but right, or like the Thanksgiving that you've experienced where they were chanting and watching some weird stuff. Like, some things are definitely like hit or miss, but a number of times, like, well, there are some times that are like gems that actually become a catalyst for you, or at least for me, to make more memories that are similar to that. And one of those was like this Hanukkah party. It was really great. I felt like I think I was the only like one or two people there that weren't part of the family or good friends. I think so. I definitely was the only person there wasn't like part of the family or good friends. So I was definitely kind of yep, just me with everybody else. But it was they were great, super super kind, and it was just so fulfilling. And and I think like yeah, what you said is just like taking the courage, taking the leap, because you deserve to take that leap of making something out of an apparent nothing. Um, and 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 also just not yeah, not letting the story that was placed upon you and the experiences that were placed upon you define who you are now. Especially as an adult, especially as adults, because we have a great opportunity to remake something, and it's a lot harder for people who struggled a lot in their childhood and young adulthood to remake that. But it kind of starts with the little steps of just taking the leap of, yeah, sure, I'll spend Thanksgiving with you, even though I'll have no idea how it's gonna go. Yeah, and I guess like the last question I have is, what advice do you have to like how can we bridge how can we how can we bridge one another? Like I don't know, I guess it's not like it's I know it's like an open-ended question, but I think that something that I want to like make clear is that like I want to do 100% do believe that we are connected and that we all are like have an opportunity to lift one another up or make space for one another and things like that. So how can we make space for one another regardless of if the holidays is something that we do look forward to, and the holidays is something that we do feel connected in, or the holidays is something that we dread, or even the holidays are hit and miss, like depending on the time of year and how we're feeling and what we're going through. And a lot of times that's how it is. It's kind of like always an up and down type of thing. Like, how do we make space for one another? And how do we get out of this? It's like everyone's on an island type of deal and realize that we're all kind of struggling with a lot of the same stuff. Uh, and yeah, let's start to talk about it and do something about it.
Yeah, I think part of it is definitely the reality that families are changing shape and society's transforming, and it's okay to have what people are calling Friendsgiving or whatever you want to call it. You can just get together with people and just have a meal and chill out. And, it doesn't have to be a positive thing. It doesn't have to be, all hunky dory or anything like that. When I was an undergrad, there was a group of us who just got together and we had like this potluck thing. It was shortly after Halloween, and we were just like, show up when you're ready, leave when you're ready. You're good. Don't worry about it. No one's gonna judge you. Just you do you. And people just came and went as they please. I think another part of it is just owning and accepting the identity. There's so much shame and stuff that goes along with the label of being a foster youth, and I think it starts with us where we have to really push back against that because, yeah, you can have your opinion, you can have whatever you want, but until you experienced it yourself, you have no right to speak on it. That's not your identity, that's not your lived experience. And so we kind of got to take it back and claim ownership of it. And yeah, I think, just there's so much pressure on being happy-go-lucky during the holidays and stuff. And I think me and my friends, just owning the bullshit and owning the depression and having conversations like this where you're just honest and real about, like, we don't have positive childhood experiences, or sharing stories about just random shit that we would do. I think the only picture I have during the holidays of me when I was younger was a picture of me and my siblings doing drugs. And it's like, well, that's just life. That's what
Yeah,
I
I
have
mean,
to draw upon. Doing drugs and eating some. I don't even know if I can call it food, but we were eating something.
dude.
But yeah, it's just owning it.
Yeah, I love that. Showing it. All
You
right.
can't control other people's feelings. Like, if someone wants to feel weird or uncomfortable about it, and I finally took this step a couple months ago in class, because the professor was like, "Oh, what are you guys doing for Thanksgiving?" And I was like, "Well, you guys keep talking about diversity and inclusion and stuff, and yet all you do is assume that people have these lived experiences and these traditions and stuff." And I said, you guys are not from this country. You're international. You're first generation Americans, and yet you've celebrated these holidays more than I have, and I've been in this country my whole life. And so, like, if you're really going to talk about diversity and inclusion and stuff, then you need to expand it beyond your narrow scope, because that's not, like, every student isn't going to have this same practice. And uh, yeah, the whole class, like, everyone in the class shut up. And I was like, well, this is awkward, but hey, at least I finally said it.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? I actually I struggle with this. I think a lot of people struggle with this regardless. Is like you don't want to be a burden to everyone else's like
Hmm.
happiness. Um, when you're talking about these social things, and then a lot of people would kind of say like, "Oh, you're complaining, or you're not grateful, or like you're no longer in that space, so like you need to get out of it." Um, but I think that's just like a huge defense mechanism that is like weaponized for people who just have just differences. Um, and I think it's one thing to like ruminate over the struggles that you've had as a child or a young adult or like in a space where you're no longer in that. But it's another thing to say like, no, this is my truth. Like this is who I am, and it doesn't define me. It's just as natural as you talking about the holidays and like looking forward to it. It's just as natural as like someone who's not. Um, and I think again, like I feel even when like talking about this, I feel like really, really anxious and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are people gonna view this whole video or like this whole talk? Like, are people gonna say like, oh, like they're just like talking about foster care again? But honestly, like this is a radical act of courage, but of just speaking up and saying just because it's not talked about doesn't mean that it's not there.
Hmm.
And we can't grow and we can't become the people and the society and the things that we can be without talking about what we ignore. Right? Because it's still there, it still shows up and we act like it doesn't, but it shows up in our everyday and we wonder why like everyone is struggling with everything. Because of we put on the happy go lucky smile, Um, and don't get me wrong, we may be happy, like we truly are, but we are multifaceted individuals, and
Mhm.
we can't act like we're not anymore because it's not doing anyone any good. And to be honest, we deserve it to the folks that come behind us to start like laying the path of no, like to start laying the path of no, like you're worth it too. Like your story is worth it too. And not even your story, like your hopes and your dreams and your everyday life that is embedded, like your conversation, your everyday conversation is also worth being heard just like everybody else's. Even though it's different and it may make somebody uncomfortable just because they didn't experience that. Well, because you didn't experience it doesn't mean that there aren't thousands of other people that are experiencing it. So yeah, thank you. Do you have like
Yeah.
any last words before we close out, brother?
Yeah, and like you said, and it's not just thousands. I mean, there's over 400,000 youth in the foster care system, and um, the vast majority of them are
Facts.
going to age out of the foster care system. And so, um, yeah, for me,
And that's just in
yeah,
the US. Like
yeah,
that's just in the
exactly.
US and that's just foster care. Right. And that's just
Yeah, that's
children. like, like
yeah, that's not yeah, that's not including juvenile hall or unhoused folks or any of that. But yeah, it's something that's taken me a very long time to get to the point where, it's like fuck it, because yeah, my childhood is I wouldn't even call it childhood, and it's definitely not something I would ever wish on anyone. Um, however, there's also times in that where, I did find happiness, and it'd be stuff that would make other people sick because they'd be like, "How did you find happiness in that? That's so disgusting." But I don't care because I had to find happiness in it. That's why I did it. It's like, I can remember times where I was just blissfully happy because, it was like, well, you just had to find the happiness in the bullshit. Um,
yes.
and yeah, I just think it's time to change. It's time to start coming together and really having these conversations and highlighting the fact that um, you don't have to have a nuclear family or whatever in order to um, have a joyful holiday or any of that. You can just, you know, do whatever you enjoy doing, and that's perfectly fine.
Last. Alrighty. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. This was good. Honestly, I felt heard. I felt seen. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna stop recording actually. Hold up.